Namaskar and welcome to Sansad Television. I am Vishal Dahiya and you're watching our show Perspective, where we bring you detailed analysis of key national and international issues. Today we're going to talk about India-Japan ties. Now, India and Japan are celebrating a 70th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between the two nations. This 7-decade-long journey has witnessed significant milestones and shared vision for the future. In a tweet, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that the ties between the two countries have deepened in every sphere, be it strategic, economic or people-to-people contacts. In fact, the recent visit to India by Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida for the annual summit laid out a roadmap for deepening this special strategic and global partnership between the two countries in a post-COVID world. Today, we will discuss and analyze all aspects of this bilateral relationship and the road ahead as well. And for more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of experts. Let me first introduce them to you. Beginning with, we have with us Professor Srabani Choudhury, who is joining us. She's the Faculty of Japanese Studies at SIS JNU. Welcome to Sansad Television, ma'am. We also have with us former Ambassador Aftab Seth. He is India's former ambassador to Japan. And Professor Rajiv Shaw is also joining us, Director of India-Japan Laboratory at Keio University in Japan. Welcome, both of you gentlemen as well. I'll begin with you, Ambassador Seth, and let's start by trying to understand the road travel so far, because 28th April marks the 70th anniversary of the diplomatic relations between both the nations. So how have we, on both sides, India and Japan, traveled along this road for the past 7 decades, and what are the key milestones and highlights?
May I just say, to begin with, that of these 70 years, I have been involved with Japan for 60. In fact, I was in Tokyo at Keio University, where Rajiv Shaw is now teaching. I was there as a student in 1962, and I arrived, in fact, in April, the anniversary time, the anniversary month of our 10th anniversary. And we had a very distinguished ambassador there called Largely Mehrotra. We had a young probationer, Alan Nazareth, who was also a very distinguished Japanese speaker. And that was the 10th anniversary. By the time we came to the 20th, I was already working in the embassy as a young officer in 1972. And we celebrated it in a rather big way, but of course, not on the kind of scale that we have done later. And we had a wonderful show by a ballet group from Gwalior, the Rangasri Ballet Group. And we had the youngest son of the former Emperor Hirohito, Prince Hitachi, as our guest.
Okay.
And I was also there for the 50th anniversary. I was ambassador by then. For the 50th anniversary of our relations, which we celebrated in a very big way. And we had His Majesty the Emperor, the Empress at one of our functions of Buddhist art. We had the Crown Prince and Princess at a joint concert of Indian and Japanese orchestras. And we had other members of the imperial family at various of our functions. And the leadership of Japan at the time, led by Prime Minister Modi and later by Prime Minister Koizumi, participated in our events in a very big way.
Okay.
By the time we came to the 60th anniversary, I happened to be in Delhi at the time, and the chairman of the Japan-India Association, Prime Minister Modi, was in Delhi, and at the center, where Professor Srabani Choudhury's book, which he has edited, is being launched tomorrow, there was a major function of photographs cataloging this immensely long and rich journey that our two countries have traveled together. And now, under your auspices of Sansad Television, we are celebrating the 70th year. And that is indeed a historic event for me personally, because I have seen it over the last 60 years at fairly close quarters.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's understand it from somebody who's again in Japan, been there as well. Professor Shaw, I'd like to bring you in here before I go to Professor Roy Choudhury there. In terms of, if we have to understand the linkage or this partnership between both the nations over a period of this long time, 7 decades? Of course, there are historical aspects as well, but the relationship has built upon itself over a period of time, and remarkably so.
Thank you. My experience with Japan is almost half of the experience of, I will say less than half of the experience of Ambassador Seth. I have been involved in past 30 years, not 60 years. And out of those 30 years, I also started my career as a student in Japan. What I'm seeing is, at least in last 30 years, especially in 30, 2010, and currently, that I think, of course, strategically, both the countries have come closer, whether it is in diplomatic relations. And I'm not possibly in a position to comment on the diplomatic ties or the defense ties or more geopolitical ties. But what I'd like to focus on two aspects where we have come together very strongly. One is the economic aspects. And by economic aspects, I don't only see that the major ODA contribution of Japan to India, but there are lots of Indian companies have currently been more focused, or they are coming to Japan and trying to see Japan as their market. And that is possibly a major significant change, at least over the last 20 years or so. And another thing, what is more closer to my current work, is more people-to-people connectivity. You mentioned about PM Modi's tweet that there were three aspects, and the last one was the people-to-people connectivity. I will say that when I came here, we had the Indian students in the range of around maybe 500, 600 per year. Now it has increased up to 1,200 to 1,300 per year. So over 30 years, the increase has been twofold. But is that enough? With the large different types of larger aspects of this collaboration, I think I just give you one example that still now the Indian student who goes to China is in the range of around 12,000 to 13,000, which is 10 times more than the students who are coming to Japan. So I think that the people-to-people connectivity there have some increase, but possibly there are lots of things which can be done. And in our small efforts in Keio University, this India-Japan lab, we are actually trying to promote that specific aspect.
Okay. We'll come to that aspect and the economic aspect as well again. But what you're pointing out is clearly important, that there are more avenues, more opportunities to build upon when we talk about people-to-people connect. But Professor Roy Choudhury, from your analysis, let's take a deep dive into how this journey has been and where do we stand today.
If you look at the 70 years, I would like to say that there is a past, the present, and definitely a future that we are going to be heading into. In the past, if you look at it, if you chronologically lay the table out, if you say 1952 was the time that we signed, and we begin out there and not look at the history, I think we had a benign existence for a large period of time till around 2000, where we interacted with each other, but we are distantly friendly. From 2000, with Modi's visit and calling this partnership as a global partnership, I think the trajectory changed. And this was mutual, I feel, because we were looking east for the first time, and Japan was also in need of newer markets, more opportunities, and definitely Japan's attempt to become internationalized itself required Japan to move towards South Asia, and India was a natural choice. From 2000 till around 2010, I think the trajectory moved quickly. We went from intermediary prime ministerial visit to becoming and making it an annual summit in 2007. And then onwards, the story has unfolded in a faster space where we've not only engaged economically, but we've moved into strategic engagement. Our ODA has built in a strategic component into it. And I think, as you correctly began by saying, that the Prime Minister Modi has said that it is reached at various levels. However, I would like to point out that while policy making has been quick, institutionalization has happened by 2+2 ministerial efforts, meetings. We have had the defense exercises that we've been conducting with Japan. Yet, at peoples to peoples level, exchange level, I think there's a lot to be done.
Okay.
Groundwork that with respect to your business needs to be worked much more, because if you look at statistics, we still do not figure high on the investments of private investments from Japanese companies to India.
Okay. Okay. Ambassador Seth, your point there on these two aspects, as both Professor Shaw and Professor Roy Choudhury are pointing out, that a lot of movement has happened, but there is a lot which still can be achieved on the front of people-to-people connections, as well as the economic aspect.
Yes, you're quite right. Professor Rajiv Shaw mentioned about students, and he's absolutely right. You know, a country like Vietnam, or let's look at South Asia, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, Nepal has more students in Japan than India. So he's absolutely right. The scope for increasing the number of students, and he was comparing China, which was 10 times the Japanese number. So there is a lot of scope for increasing the number of students. I myself was a student there 60 years ago, but at that time there may have been a half a dozen students. Now they're, of course, in the hundreds and in the thousands. Yes, that's one. On the strategic level, which Professor Roy Choudhury pointed out very correctly, she's right in saying that 2000 Modi's visit, when we established a global partnership between Atal Bihari Vajpayee and Yoshihiro Modi. That was raised by Manmohan Singh and Abe in December 2006 to a strategic and global partnership, which was raised further in September 2015 by Modi and Shinzo Abe to a special global and strategic partnership. And the strategic dimension has moved, gradually every year, bigger and bigger. It started actually with Modi, the uniformed officers meeting each other for the first time here in Japan. For the first time, you had Coast Guard joint exercises. And as she pointed out, already by 2005, 2005, Koizumi came to India. By 2007, we had the first naval exercises in April 2007 between Japan, India, and USA.
Okay.
And in September of that year, Singapore and Australia joined us. So see, the beginnings of the Quad, as we see it today, between America, Australia, Japan, and India, started in 2007. So that has been the trajectory of the rise, of course, on the defense front, on strategic help to us in the sensitive northeast of India. Developing the infrastructure there, the road, railway, bridge infrastructure, so that we can better access the markets of ASEAN, developing for us the Andaman Islands, which are 8 kilometers from the island of Sumatra of Indonesia and strategically placed at the Straits of Malacca. This is where Japan and India are now in a very important strategic relation. The Malabar exercises, of course, are there, but we both see the need to keep the Indo-Pacific an area where rule-based international relations are practiced.
Okay. Okay. We'll come to that part, and that's a very important and significant aspect given the present ongoing geopolitical situation as well. But I'd like to bring in Professor Shaw here on the economic part before we move on to the strategic part there. You were earlier mentioning, Professor Shaw, that it's not just people-to-people connect, but on the economy and trade activity part as well, there are ample opportunities to build upon. So what are the areas which can now become the focus areas from here onwards?
Thank you. I think the manufacturing sector is one of the major areas where India, Japan can come together, not just for these two countries, but this particular partnership can go beyond the bilateral relation. And by manufacturing, I say that, in Japan, like there is a principle we call the Kaizen, which is the quality control of a product, where we always use a plan, do, check, and action cycle. So it's like the Made in Japan brand was actually formed because of this whole quality control cycle. And there, I personally feel that India can possibly learn a lot from this Japan's principles of Kaizen and this whole Made in India campaign, which Prime Minister is very strongly putting forward to produce different types of products within India. There possibly this particular collaboration can go beyond, can significantly contribute very strongly. Another is, of course, the IT industry, which has been always like past at least 10 years or so. There have been very strong growth in the IT industry. And there have been lots of inputs. Say, for example, a major company, Japanese company like Rakuten, they have made Rakuten India, which more than now 3,000 people they are there, and more than 1,000 people from India, they are working in Tokyo as the IT consultants and the IT expert. So one is the manufacturing part, another one is possibly this IT and innovation part. And another part, I would also focus on the services, especially on the hospitality business, because Japan's, there is this concept of omotenashi, which is like the service to the people or service for your customer. Again, very similar to this Kaizen concept, which is for the manufacturing, this omotenashi concept for the hospitality or the service-related business. I think that's possibly another future area I see a major potential growth.
Okay. Indeed, those are key potential areas there. Professor Roy Choudhury, from your point of view, not only the economic aspect, but also the strategic aspect, if we have to understand of this relationship and the avenues from here onwards, the road ahead, because both sides, both countries will have to find new ways to not only increase people-to-people connect, but also increase the cooperation to the next level.
You're all aware of, the Quad is becoming a major player in the Indo-Pacific, and in the Quad you have the two countries that are really working towards it is India and Japan. Japan has actually been the country that promoted this whole concept, and Abe is known for his push to this concept of Quad, and Quad has established itself in the second round pretty firmly right now, in spite of issues that often crop up when AUKUS happen. People believe that it would not survive, but we have shown, the leaderships have shown that this is something that is here to stay. I personally believe that the strategic component, though we do talk about it as a strategic component, has an inbuilt economic aspect, because Japan's major way of engaging with any country still continues to be primarily economics. And as Aftab said, Ambassador has pointed out, that we are now geopolitically, geostrategically very important, because we have the Andaman Nicobar Islands that are next to the Malacca state. We have the Northeast India, which can be a great gateway to a large number of landlocked countries. And being friendlier to those countries, we can become a good way of containing China as a plan that always exists between the liberal order nations. What I personally feel is going to become important in our cooperation is to build beyond this bilateralism, engage in the Indo-Pacific in developmental agenda programs, which would enable us to create more equity and equitability among the littoral states around Indo-Pacific zone. And I think in the working together, cooperating in a third country is going to significantly improve during the next decade. And I'm sure when we converse about the next decade, we would see a multi-level, multi-player kind of a situation where both private, public investors would work together from both India and Japan to create engagements like what would become probably a kind of a integrated way of taking this entire region towards a much more equitable, prosperous region.
Okay. Ambassador Said, final comment from you on this, the way you see this relationship moving ahead on various aspects. We've spoken at length about people-to-people connect, the economic cooperation as well, the strategic cooperation at various levels. But as Professor Roy Choudhury is pointing out, it's not going to be just about the bilateral ties or bilateral relationship or the cooperation between India and Japan, but what both countries are able to do and are capable of doing at the global level as well.
This is quite right. Just a quick comment on Professor Rajiv Shaw's comment on the Rakuten company, which is employing 1,000 Indians. This is very important. Rakuten is a unique Japanese company. The chairman, a fellow called Mikitani, as far back as 2012, made English the official language of the company, sitting in Tokyo. And no Japanese could join unless he was able to work in the English language. That has been instrumental in building on what Modi and Vajpayee did in 2000, which is opening up the IT market for India. And from 2000, over the last 2 decades, IT has become, as Professor Rajiv Shaw said, a vital component of our cooperation.
Mm-hmm.
On the manufacturing side, don't forget, Japan has been a pioneer for India. The motorcycle industry, TVS, in Madras, and Suzuki here in the early 80s, they were the beginnings of the modernization of our automobile industry in this country. Mm-hmm. Then Toyota followed, Honda followed, and everybody else followed. But it is Suzuki, Osamu Suzuki, who was the pioneer with R.C. Bhargav, who's now the chairman of Maruti. And he is the man, and Krishnamurti, who started it all. And you see, the role model, the good practices, what you're saying, the Kaizen practices, quality control, watching every step of your manufacturing process, making sure that your spares come on time, only on time and not too much, so you don't build up an inventory. All this we have learned from Japan. Mm-hmm. They also started our infrastructure in the early 70s with the Mitsubishi oil rig for Bombay High. So they have been in, and of course the bullet train we know, even though it's running a little long behind schedule, but the Delhi Metro and various other infrastructure projects. The contribution of Japan to the development of our infrastructure, which has been very strong so far, in my view, is likely to grow.
Okay.
So too in the idea or in the area of information technology. And as Professor Roy Choudhury said, on the strategic front, I see further growth, not only, as you say, for bilateral benefit to our two navies or our two armed forces, but also for other countries like Vietnam. Mm-hmm. It is vital for Japan and it is vital for India. It is one of the strongest countries in Southeast Asia militarily, and it has a strong economy, hardworking people, and is well disposed, very well disposed towards India historically, and well disposed towards Japan.
Indeed.
Indonesia, another country. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, working together in third countries, as Professor Rajiv Shaw and Professor Roy Choudhury have rightly underlined, is something that we will see happening as we go forward to the 80th anniversary.
Indeed, indeed. And we will be looking forward to 90th and the 100th anniversary there as well. Of course, these are very strong ties and are likely to continue further in various aspects and various areas, as you pointed out. Thank you so much, Ambassador Seth, Professor Rajiv Shaw and Professor Roy Choudhury as well for sharing your views and insight. As our experts were pointing out, this cooperation or this relationship between India and Japan has been a very interesting one, and the path so far has seen very significant milestones, achievements on both sides, and there is a lot more which can be done based on the individual capabilities of both the countries, the bilateral ties, as well as what both nations can do on a global stage, a global scale as well. We'll come back again tomorrow with a different topic. Till then, keep watching Sansad Television. Thank you.